woman stood on a cliff top, looking out over the waves, out to the horizon beyond. Just her.
Earth, Water, Fire is a show which is a combination of storytelling and music and moving image. And it is all about rural life in North Devon and monsters and heroes and what it might be like to imagine folktale of now.
This project and performance was very much at the heart of where we, Beeford, think our ethos should be, which is involving the arts, involving heritage and involving the environment. We were really pleased that we could take our community members out into our landscape, on-site visits, not just talking about things inside buildings, but actually being outside in North Devon and to connect really with nature and to understand the real urgency and the concepts behind the whole project process.
We wanted to set up safe spaces where people could genuinely share feelings and thoughts about some of these huge issues. And we worked those around the different elements, earth and water and fire. So earth about soil and farming, water about rivers and seas and pollution and flooding, and fire about wildfire, but also about fire in the belly, activism.
Hold the fire in your gaze.
So we did 3 workshops, 1 on each theme, and we did 3 site visits, 1 on each theme. And we said to people, you can come to any of those and mix and match.
I was interested in how this project would communicate climate change to a different group of people in Northern Devon, the ones that I don't normally see. And I think as soon as I turned up to the workshop and saw the diversity of people that were attending, I realised that that was definitely going to work and that the project would be a success from that point of view.
Is actually stored in soil as carbon.
For me, the brilliant thing was the way the people who participated just absolutely engaged. They were brilliant. They were prepared to play with the science, they were prepared to play with their own stories, they were prepared to play with the environments that we were in and to just be open-minded and hear other perspectives and ask questions.
Well, it's been fascinating. I mean, I particularly enjoyed when we stopped in the field and you dug down for the soil sample and talking about the life that is in the soil, the life that is below the ground that we take for granted.
We also spent some time exploring the sounds that we heard in the landscape, which I think helped me kind of dip into the sensory experience of being at a place like this.
To actually be in the landscape as well doing those visits was very important, and I kind of felt every time I went into the landscape I kind of understood what I was doing a bit better, understanding the way that the valleys worked and how it felt to be at the bottom of the valley compared to the top of the valley, the kind of perspective you get, whether you're on a coast feeling the pounding of the waves or inland listening to a rushing river. All of these kind of ingredients, you had to put your body in the landscape to kind of understand it.
The voices of the people in the workshops have been brought into the story itself through the kind of storytelling form and also through the music which Emma's composed.
The hydrological cycle shows that water responds to its conditions. It carves meanders, flows around obstacles high.
Quite early on in our devising, I was reading and absorbing a lot of information about science to do with climate change, to do with soil, earth, water, fire. There was a lot of things that looked like graphs that were rising. And I took that really simple starting point. I literally translated a graph onto musical notation.
Climate change, that big thing that none of us know what to do with. In the storytelling world, there are lots and lots of people saying what are the stories we need here? How do we inspire? How do we garner action? How do we use storytelling to help people meet this crisis of crises, this thing that we are all terrified of, that's this kind of underlying baseline in everything. So this is one attempt to try and do that.
For 3 long years, that great monster terrorised the land at Lambton Hall. Scores of animals, scores of people were lost, and still the storms grew in the sky and the rain fell and fell.
We started really working with the music and story together right from the very beginning.
And he dropped it. And he waited until there was a little splash. Thank you.
The very different voices of Lisa and Emma, they're very different processes and they're very different aesthetics of how they come to the work that they make.
The little creature opened its jaws and clamped them on his thumb. Ow! What's that you got there? Behind him was a little old travelling man, standing a bit too close.
North Devon is made up of a huge variety of landscapes, from high moors to rugged rocky coastline to sandy beaches. I've spent the last 10 years as a filmmaker documenting these ever-changing locations. I began trying to work out how I could photograph these locations and present them to an audience in a way they were not familiar with. So I began playing with time, speeding up time with time-lapse and hyperlapse, and then going to the other extreme of slow motion. These types of shots create a very different atmosphere on the stage when projected.
What are our monsters now? Who are the heroes now? What do they need to do? So it brings all of that together, but it is based on meetings and conversations and site visits with members of the North Devon community.
So it was great that we could tour this piece to 6 different rural communities across North Devon, and we wanted to be able to put these performances in village halls, community centres, and in not only villages but in a town.
So every village hall is different. And you've always got to have that in your mind when you're sort of thinking about what sort of approach to take and what sort of elements to incorporate into the storytelling. And so like turning up to every hall, it's like sometimes you might have a big hall and you get sort of no colours and things coming off the lights onto the walls. But then sometimes you can get some really interesting sort of effects that you weren't necessarily expecting, but you know, it's like every hall just brings its own character, and building the show into that and making good use of that's always a really exciting challenge on a rural tour.
It's also been about connecting with some of the local communities who are experiencing climate change, be that flooding in Braunton or the wildfires at Baggy, or some of the other impacts that we're seeing.
People who are living in the countryside, often working the land, owning the land, wanting different things from the land, that has a particular special relationship with both the state of our nature and the state of our carbon. So people in rural areas can do an awful lot, possibly disproportionately more than somebody in a city, to help to lock up that carbon, to help to bring that nature back.
It's the pressures that farming community as a whole is under to provide food at a reasonable cost, as it's termed, and or price, and those pressures lead to decisions which are not necessarily the best for the land, and often knowing that they're putting pressure on the land, farmers don't have much of a choice.
Whilst the work is really specifically about North Devon, there are these people across the country are facing these issues, and so we don't really need to always have something directly about our place to feel the resonance of how those issues in other places affect us. I think what's also great about storytelling is that it has a kind of longevity in that it can shift and adapt to people and place and just keep developing.
I've really enjoyed it this evening. I thought the storytelling and the music worked beautifully together, and the video and the sounds and all the emotions really kind of were brought out in many different directions. It was great.